Good evening, welcome. How's everybody doing? Good. On this, what's feeling like the first day of spring, which is always nice. Welcome to Matter. My name is Arun Bhatia, Senior Program Director here at Matter. How many folks have never been here before? Okay, good number. Well, welcome. We are, just a brief overview. We are obviously a health tech incubator here in Chicago. We just turned 4 years old, and part of our mission here at Matter is really to help bring industry and entrepreneurs together in healthcare to help solve real challenges that patients have. So we do programming throughout the year. This represents an exciting type of program that we run. AbbVie is one of our founding partners. So actually, if I back up, we have about 220 startup companies that are part of our network here. But we also work with about 60 industry partners, from pharma to health systems to payers. AbbVie is one of our founding partners, has been a partner of ours since the beginning, and we are very thrilled and very honored to be a partner with them. Part of our mission here at Matter is about innovation through collaboration. So as I mentioned, what hopefully differentiates us is that we are not just an incubator space for startups, but we are a spot where startups can come and meet with a lot of these industry innovators as they build their solutions. So the premise really is if you're an innovator, you're developing a new solution, you should be across the table from folks in pharma, from the payer side, from the health system provider, patient side, to develop your solution in the best possible way. Part of collaboration is diversity of perspective, and that's something we believe really, really strongly in. Diversity, not just in terms of function, but in terms of domain and expertise as well. For those of you that don't know, AbbVie is a biopharmaceutical company here in Chicago, just headquartered in North Chicago. They have about 9,000 employees here in Illinois and a little over 30,000 employees worldwide. They focus in some very key, very important health areas: immunology, oncology, virology, neuroscience, and women's health. And they have demonstrated a commitment to therapies and solutions in this space. What is really exciting and relevant to this evening's program, in 2017, it was noted that this was a really interesting statistic for me. More than half of AbbVie's total workforce was made up of women, and women continue to represent new talent coming into the organization. Over 50% of new hires are women. So again, they have demonstrated, yes. They have demonstrated a commitment to this diversity, which feeds the type of collaboration that we are also trying to build here. Notably in 2018, the company was recognized as being in the top 10 for working mothers, and on the list for 100 best companies to work for as well. So again, a great tribute there. So we have a really exciting program tonight, a great panel of speakers and leaders from within AbbVie to not only share their experiences and their insights, but I think a tremendous amount of experience for us to all learn from. So thank you to the folks at AbbVie, Jacqueline, Gabby, for helping put this together. Thrilled to have all of you here. And I will turn it over to Tara Banow, if I said that right, who is going to be our moderator this evening. And Tara works for Modern Healthcare and leads some of their practice there. So please join me in welcoming all the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for being here. So my coverage area is hospital finance. I'm usually buried in hospitals' financial statements, so it's cool to come out of my cave and be here in front of some people. I'm going to have each of the panelists kind of introduce themselves and tell me a little bit about the work that each of them does at AbbVie. So let's start with you.
So my name is Joan Byrne, and I work in operations, science, and technology. And we are engaged with R&D early on to predict how we will scale up and eventually manufacture our products. We're also responsible for any changes that are required either through market feedback or new presentations as they come along with the therapy. Yeah, Germany, UK, Ireland, and the majority of our group is located here in Lake County.
My name is Heather Maker. I'm a director of immuno-oncology at AbbVie. So I basically develop drugs that target a patient's immune system to target and eradicate tumors. Specifically, the area of drug discovery that I focus on is something known as synthetic immunology, where we engineer the patient's own immune system, cellular therapy, to treat out and target cancer as well as oncoviruses. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Good evening, my name is Charlotte Owens. I'm a medical director at AbbVie. In that role as a medical director, I'm part of a cross-functional team and I oversee the development, the implementation, and the interpretation of clinical trials.
Excellent. So my name's Caitlin Broman. I'm a senior director in discovery, and discovery is really the early part of the research and development pipeline where we're trying to identify what target would make sense to hopefully become what the therapeutic addresses to bring that remarkable impact to patients. And my specific role is I work with an amazingly awesome team, and we basically do the operations and portfolio management for that organization.
So I think every woman on this stage and hopefully in this room has a strong support system, people who've been there throughout their entire career journeys, whether it be mothers, fathers, spouses, colleagues, friends. I want you guys to share your insights on how your support system has pushed you or given you greater confidence to take the next step at a critical moment in your career.
So early on in my career, I started my first scientific job in industry, yay, and was fortunate enough to become pregnant with our first child, yay, and all was going well, and I was in the hospital and I just delivered a beautiful little girl, yay. And I got a call from my boss at the company at the time that they were closing a site and that we were all going to be looking for jobs soon. Not so yay. So from there, so it was a little bit of a transition, but I had this very positive thing in my life to keep me going. Not shortly after that, I got a call from a former colleague that I'd worked that they had a position open for me as a scientist at the next company. And my husband at the time had a very high-powered career. And in my career, my husband actually chose to quit his job to stay home with our daughter, while I went back to a more junior role as a scientist in my career. And just incredibly generous and supportive and gave me the confidence to go forward with that. And it worked out very well because I'm here at AbbVie.
Does anyone else want to address that one?
I guess for me, it would be my mom. Both of my parents have always been very supportive to me, but at key points in my career where I was trying to decide what path to take, it was really my mom who was there and gave me the confidence. She's the first person in her family to have gone to college. She didn't get a lot of support to go to college, but she persevered because she really just believes that continual learning and development is fundamentally important to being a well-rounded, happy, satisfied human being. She was getting her master's in physics at Stanford when she married my father, and so she quit her career and followed him. And then when she went back to work when I was in high school, she did it as a computer programmer, so not really the physics that she had been trained in, although she had experience in programming. And she really self-taught herself what she needed to be very successful in her career. She was approached by her boss at one point, and he said basically she had enough that she had done that she could write a dissertation and essentially get a PhD. And she declined it because she said she didn't do it for the degree. She did it because she really wanted to challenge herself and learn. And so I think that's something that she always instilled in me, is that do your best at everything you do and be rewarded by that, not by other people's values. And so when I was trying to decide, after my first year of postdoc, I really wanted to go into academia. That was just everything that I had been training for. And a pharmaceutical company approached me and asked me to interview and offered me a job. And I was really, really torn, because everything I had done was to go into academia, but I fell in love with the mission of what pharmaceutical companies are trying to do. I was getting tremendous pressure from everyone who had trained me to not go into pharma. And I had this conversation with my mom where she just reminded me, you need to be rewarded by what you need for you and not other people's values. The pharma company made it easier because they actually offered my now husband a job as well, so that helped with the decision too.
So you all obviously have great support systems that have really helped you in your careers, but you're also incredibly accomplished, intelligent women. So now you're in a job. What tips or advice do you have for advancing in a traditionally male-dominated field? Joan, you're in manufacturing and engineering. How do you navigate the environment?
So, this is interesting. We're having a women discussion. I guess I never really thought about it until somebody points it out to me. What's most important is knowing what the question that you're trying to answer and actually generating data that answers the question. Because there's no networking, there's no who do you know, there's no fluff in it. The data speaks volumes and will do the speaking for you. So for me, it's always go off, don't make a big deal out of it, generate the data, and boom, there it is. And you're the generator of that data, and therefore your stock goes up. So that's how I'm looking at it. And the more you come in with those answers, the more questions they send your direction.
I like that. Charlotte, you're a physician, you're an OBGYN, so you specialize in women's health. Can you talk about what that's like and what you're most proud of in your current role advancing treatments for women?
So I think I'm able to combine the knowledge I have as an obstetrician gynecologist and not only the medical knowledge, but also the knowledge about the changing healthcare landscape in my day-to-day work. And being assigned to a team that is charged with making progress against things that affect women is really rewarding, because it's what I did, why I chose obstetrician, why I chose to be an obstetrician gynecologist, and why working in this space is actually very rewarding.
Excellent. And working in the medical and scientific field can take years of training and time in the lab. What advice or tips would you tell your younger self about your career? When you think back to those long nights in the labs when you earned your degree, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, I guess for me it was, when I look back on it now, I'm like, how stupid was I that I wasn't really paying attention to what I was always doing? And so I love this question, because I actually think that there are a lot of clues if you actually look back at some of your behaviors. So for me, I would find myself, it would be midnight on a Friday night, and I would be staining my tissues while I was reading admissions for the next class. So I was the type of person who was always on the committees, always wanting to make things better, always wanting to do things smarter and faster. And that started early in my graduate career. It wasn't really until I became at AbbVie, and I was doing really well in my day job as being a bench scientist, but my nights and evenings were spent on committees, doing the extra work, trying to fix processes. So that was sort of a aha moment when I realized this was something that was carrying with me throughout my whole life. So when a position opened to do something else, it was a very natural transition. And I then added my MBA on top of my PhD, and I've since realized that's actually a very, very powerful combination, to have the science and the business.
Joan, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I can add to it. I guess for me, in the beginning, you want to master whatever task is put in front of you so that you can quickly learn the next trick, is how I looked at it. It was ingrained in me by my father, everybody is replaceable. So I really thought that I needed to pick up as many tricks as I could. I also probably have a little bit of a foreshadowing that I was going to end up in Ireland in the long run. They, at the time, were very big on manufacturing computers. So for me, I really wanted to get into clean room technology. I started as a microbiologist. I was sampling water, and I quickly got involved and nosy and looking at what other people are doing and learning a new skill. So what I would encourage people to do is find out what the people upstream and downstream of you are doing, pick up some of those skills. Any student that comes into any of my labs, I say you must learn chromatography. So, you know, there's certain things that will always help you get a job, but I also think that you should be thinking about skills that may be portable, because you're not going to be able to control some life decisions that'll happen. So if you try and get a real diverse portfolio of skills, that'll really stand to you in the end, even if you stay in the same industry.
And even for those who stay in it, in terms of what they trained for, your career can still be quite varied. Heather, I wonder if you can talk a little bit about your work in IO, which shorthand everyone knows for immuno-oncology. I didn't know that before this, but why is that important for patients? And talk about your career in that.
Actually, right now it's a great year to talk about immuno-oncology with the awarding of the Nobel Prize this year, which is phenomenal. But back early on, in regards to this field of research, the idea that you would target the immune system to eradicate cancer, if you were studying immuno-oncology, you either weren't really a good cancer biologist because you would be doing genotyping and you would be doing targeted sort of pathways for cancer. And you weren't considered to be a really good immunologist because you would be studying sort of infectious diseases. But I would say in regards to that is thought that those fields had to merge, that there had to be sort of a dysfunction of the immune system because it was involved in regulating all other disease processes and sticking with it. So I think that's what's really fun about the immuno-oncology field right now, or other ones that you would choose to pursue. And the other thing I would say is to love your failed experiments. The results that you weren't anticipating, it's almost everything interesting that I ended up doing was because I got something in the lab that wasn't supposed to happen, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and trying to figure out why you got the result that, or you made a mistake, and then figuring out how you made the mistake, and then it led to a better result. So embrace the failed experiments and the path unchosen.
I want to touch on everyone's favorite buzzword, mentors. How do you find them? How do you nurture the relationships? What wisdom can you guys share on that subject? Charlotte, you want to start?
So I would say mentors for me have been important my entire life, personally and professionally. And clearly, when most people think about a physician, you think about practicing medicine. So as I made the decision to move into a different field, it was important for me to have people that I could talk to about how and why this may be important to do. So I think the way that I approached it was to seek people that I admired and people that had a skill set that I desired, and to find people that were really interested in giving me some of their time and their talent. And that continues to this day. And the way I nurture those relationships is the same way that I nurture any friendship. You invest time, you have to be authentic and transparent, and you have to be willing to hear not only the positive things, but the not so positive things so that you can grow. And so that's really what I recommend when you're thinking about a mentor.
And I think one of the things that I really appreciate about our company is we have programs around mentoring. One of the ones that I find especially interesting is we have a STEM challenge program where we've been basically in the North Chicago area. We mentor students who are working on innovative projects or systems to try to bring better health and wellness to the local communities. So I think mentoring can be the one-on-one, but it can also be more formal programs.
And the other thing I'd like to add there is a lot of times you think of a mentor as somebody who has a title higher than you or a position that's elevated. And some of the best mentors that I've had in my career were actually my colleagues, my peers that I was learning for as they were developing challenges. And I would say the further you go along and they go off and do their things, you will reach back and continue to connect with your peers. So a mentor doesn't always have to be somebody with a higher title or position than you are. That can be very helpful in growing and addressing a problem.
So I just wanted to make a couple comments. I'm sure you guys are all approached a lot by people looking for mentoring relationships. So just some tips on how to be a good mentee. Come prepared. Have a specific topic that you want to discuss. When you've tackled that, if there's another topic that you want to discuss, that's fine, or you can continue that relationship, but if it's reached what you thought you originally set out for, maybe ask for my next challenge I want to work on, do you want to recommend another? Because I think it's really important that you get some diverse feedback. I also agree and wanted to emphasize that having relationships with people from many different perspectives is very helpful. And it can be ad hoc too. Just tell me what you're thinking about that. I have a colleague in HR in Ireland, and he likes to say, your network is your net worth. So it's something that if you can rely on it, and it's a two-way street. So give feedback as well.
15 years from now, how do you hope things change for women in STEM? What challenges do you hope will no longer pose hurdles for women?
I hope to see more female representation on boards of companies.
I hope that the conversation is actually different in the sense that there are no limits, and there's no limits in the mind of the ladies and no limits in the mind of the men as to what we can do.
I hope that it's easier for women to find their voice in the workplace.
I have nothing additional to add.
All right, well, let's move on to Q&A. This is fun. We've got a lot of questions on here for you guys. Let's start with number one. Do you think it's more challenging to be a female versus a male physician? Do you have any advice for future female physicians?
I think it's less challenging today. When you look at many of the numbers in schools, it's almost 50-50 in many respects. But I do think that you're coming into a profession where indeed it was more challenging to be a woman than it was to be a guy. And so I think that what you have to do is believe in yourself, study hard, because I do still believe in a meritocracy, but also surround yourself with people that can help you, because you don't know what you don't know. And also to open yourself to how you can practice, because yes, the traditional road to medicine is to go to medical school, do a residency, and then practice in that specialty. But look around and see how else you can better people around you, because health is not just the physiological state of being, it's the mental, it's the social. And so I think one of the things that you have to do is to be a person that nurtures the whole body. So I encourage women to really do what you love, be passionate about pursuing it, and don't recognize obstacles, build paths or roads where there appear to be none.
This one is specifically for you, Caitlin. Can you tell us about your experience as an associate research investigator? Was it similar to that of an academic? an academic investigator?
So that's an interesting question. It was in terms of the science. So a lot of in terms of hypothesis building, in terms of how you would set the research direction, and it was very similar. But you didn't have the teaching component. You have mentoring, which I really enjoy in industry, but you don't have the teaching component. You don't have the need to write grants. So your money is there. On the other hand, you also don't choose your field of research always.
Did you pursue your postdoc? If so, was it a traditional postdoc or an industry position? That's for anyone who wants to answer it.
I can answer first. I did a traditional academic postdoc.
I did an industry postdoc, but it was kind of a academic/industry postdoc.
I take the compliment that you handed me the microphone. I often get things addressed to Dr. Byrne, but I have a BS and an MBA.
How did you make the transition from clinical to industry work, and what advice would you provide women interested in doing the same?
So I came about it because research was a requirement from my undergrad years. And I was like, oh, when I just finish this bachelor's degree, I'll be done with research. No. When I went to medical school, I was in the first year where you had to do research. And I said, oh, when I finish medical school, I'll be done with research. No. When I went to residency, I was surrounded by my professors who were actually key opinion leaders and always very well sought after by industry for their knowledge, as well as to participate as principal investigator in clinical trials. And so I started doing research underneath them, and I built up a reputation that followed me once I graduated from residency into my own practice. And so while I was a principal investigator doing clinical trials, I became a consultant and then a speaker. And then that body of work led to an offer with my first pharmaceutical company to come in-house and become the worldwide medical director. And it was a global position. And one of the things that I sought from my key mentors at that time is that they told me, maintain your board certification and find a way to donate your time and still see patients and still teach. So I am still an adjunct faculty member. I go when time permits back to the university where I still can see patients, operate, teach residents and medical students, because I still think that part is important, because they still need to see that it's possible to fulfill your dreams. And for me, this role of being in industry full-time, but still having that entry into real-life patient care and healthcare is really important. So I have transitioned, but I've kept the tentacles in the places where I feel it's still good for me.
For those of you who pursued an MBA, how did your career path change, or how did other people's perception of your capabilities change?
So I think that, so I got my MBA in finance, and I don't know if it necessarily changed people's perceptions of me, but it enhanced my ability to have conversations with people that I might not have had before. A large part of working in industry is budgets, long-range planning, understanding where the financial flows go. I'm not in this area, but taxes play an important part of the conversation as well. So for me, I'm very comfortable as I've moved up in the organization. You might not have had the conversations at the lower level, but as you moved up, the conversations become extremely vital to the decision-making process. So for me, I found it to be very beneficial. Just even very simple things, net present value, understanding investment pieces really are quite helpful. And there were nothing that I saw, nothing even remotely in my undergraduate degree with the biology and chemistry. That's just not what we did. And I was also pushing towards a double degree and the 2 technical degrees, so there was no electives, and those that I had were in cultural anthropology. So, so for me, I think it's a great complement to the skill set, and I often tell people ask me, what do you do? And I say, I'm a translator. And they say, what do you mean you're a translator? I say, I can speak science and I can speak business. And very often those 2 disciplines cannot talk to each other at all. So I think for me, it's found me a niche that works very well.
Yeah, and I guess for me, I hate finance. So I chose a slightly different path with my MBA, and I intentionally selected a school that was geared towards people who were working and wanted to augment their career. So I started to see benefits from day one. I was a very awkward presenter, and they allowed us to bring challenges we were working on at work, or actually we were encouraged to bring it into class. And so we got a lot of hands-on feedback in terms of how to frame things more strategically, how to present them with better confidence. So I don't think my MBA per se caused anybody to view me differently, but I certainly was able to have those conversations much more professionally. And it also helped a lot with things like strategic thinking or getting to those bigger business problems a lot quicker.
Finance isn't that bad. What programs does AbbVie have in place to promote diversity both within itself and within the community?
So it's interesting. We've been talking quite a bit about diversity and inclusion. I'm a part of our R&D culture team, and it's come up quite a bit. I like this one because it's grassroots, so I don't know if it's exactly getting at the question, but we recently just launched a program that was designed by a team from across R&D, and basically what they issued a challenge is if everybody could make one commitment to do something towards intentional inclusion, wouldn't that be powerful? We would see such an amazing cultural revolution around that. So we've done this in trees, and people we're bringing them to our buildings tomorrow. So there are a lot of, they're the formal programs, but I think what I really like about what we're doing is that we're really encouraging the grassroots too.
This question is for Heather. How do you see startup biotech companies making an impact with the pace of changes occurring in the cell therapy space?
Actually, it's the startups that are driving a lot of the innovation that's out there. There's very exciting things going on in the various startup companies in the field of cell therapy. In particular, how do you control the activity of the engineered cell? Can you introduce immune-enhancing transgenes to further increase the activity more? On-off switches, some of the most creative and innovative sort of ideas are coming out of startups.
Developing a network seems easier at a large organization like AbbVie. Any advice for those working in small entities?
So there's a lot of industry forums that I would encourage you to participate in, and also encourage you to get on some of the specialized groups. So for me, I'm in charge of parenteral and combination products. So we go to med tech, and then we also, the PDA is a very powerful, the Parenteral Drug Association, and they have a lot of specific groups, like they have a micro group, they have an auto injector group, they have all the different groups. If you want to study glass, it's amazing. You can have a whole career just based on the properties of glass. So, you know, there's plenty of networking opportunities out there, but those would be some key ones that I would highlight. Get involved in industry forums. Yeah.
Is that true about glass?
Yes.
That's cool. This is
the crack
also
is perpendicular to the insult to the glass. Did you know that?
No, I
Well, see?
did not know that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. This one's also for Caitlin. Can you explain a little bit more about the work you do in being a translator from business to science?
Yeah, so that wasn't my phrase, so I'm very complimented that it was given to me. There are a lot of different ways, because if you think about it, we're trying to take that science and we're trying to bring it to patients so that we can deliver remarkable impact. So there are a lot of different components. We talked about finance, which is one that scientists don't like to speak about, but yet it's fundamentally important if you're going to have a business. There's also telling the story so other parts of the organization can understand what this deep science means and can work with it to translate it to the drug or the product that we want to bring to patients. There are other ways as well that are really important, like if you're working with external collaborators, you need to have a contract in place. Somebody needs to be able to translate what that means for the scientific deliverable as well as how you would run it. So those are a few examples.
Internationally, where do you see the most potential for innovative biotechs? This is for anybody.
I don't think we're region limited. I can use one example, the field of cell therapy. It may have started more trials in the United States, but there are currently more clinical trials running in China right now than anywhere else globally. I think innovation comes from all around the world and with diverse perspectives.
What were the most important transferable skills when you moved from academia to industry?
I think one of the main things that you have to learn is to communicate cross-functionally in a way that allows you to be a part of a different kind of team than what you're used to in academic. The other thing I think is business acumen, is to really understand how what you're doing is related to an overall business strategy. And another thing I would say is networking differently. In academia, when you're practicing clinician, you get referrals from your colleagues, et cetera. It's very similar in a business environment that you have to learn how to build trust, not only as the scientific person, but a person that can be a resource across different functional areas.
So I probably entered industry at a different level than some of my colleagues here. So I was hired in as the person who went and collected the water and filtered the water. And for me, the way I look at it is what you learned in your college career teaches you a language, that you have enough that you can understand to learn and to gain the skills. But being in industry is an amazing school, right? It's limitless what you can, if you have the energy and the curiosity, you can continue to learn, and there's many, many people who want to teach and to be listened to. So, so it is a bit. I mean, it is a little bit different journey. But each year, you gain 2-3 more skills, and then now you can speak to a much broader audience than you had before. So that was my journey, and that's kind of what I have 4 kids that are in college at the moment, and that's what I'm telling them. Don't put too much pressure on the whole situation. You can't control it. Your life is going to take a lot of twists and turns, but learn a language that you like to speak, and then it'll continue to evolve as you move on the journey.
Okay, Charlotte, the audience has a few questions for you, and I think they're pretty good questions, so let's ask them. How did you find yourself in industry work? It seems like in med school, we don't get much exposure to it.
Again, I think for me it was doing what I was required to do in school and in residency, which was research, learning that skill set very similar to what you just heard. And it really allowed me to be known as a potential researcher, a potential speaker, and a thought leader. And that is what got me my first job in industry. I've been through a couple of industries, including pharma, since that time, and it's all because I think I've added on to my skill set. So I think what you're hearing is a reoccurring theme. You start off with one skill set, but because you're able to learn, and you should be a continuing learning system, then you're able to combine those new learnings with networking. And people start to see you in different ways than you intended. People start to see you in different ways than maybe you even saw yourself. And so opportunities come to you, and I think it's just an amazing way to still practice medicine, because when I'm in the hospital and I'm delivering a surgery or delivering a certain therapy, it had to start somewhere. And this is where it starts. It starts in the pharmaceutical and device industry. So it's an amazing way to actually see that not only can I be downstream and deliver the care, but I'm upstream actually helping to create it. And so I just started to be able to see the connection between where I'm at and where I could go. And I was just open to it. And that's how I found myself here.
The next question is pretty similar to that, but we have the question here, should physicians practice pre-industry?
Definitely. And let me tell you why. Because when you come out of medical school and you graduate, yes, you're a doctor, but you're an unskilled doctor at that time. You don't have a specialty. No one should really, expect to have all the knowledge after you've just come out of medical school and residencies. And that's what residency is really about. And so I did practice. I am and became board certified and maintained that board certification because your knowledge is so critical to this role. You can't say, well, back in the day, that's how it used to be. If you're trying to create cutting edge technology, current science, you not only have to have knowledge that's current, but you have to be able to read and absorb new things. You have to be able to have conversations with other people and interpret that and use that. So I definitely think that if you're going to be in an industry that ultimately is to serve patients, you need to understand what that delivery system is about, but you also need to keep your mind moving and absorbing new information so that you can be the best value to your company. So yes, definitely practice, become board certified, and that way you're really, really knowledgeable. You heard my other colleagues here who went and got other advanced degrees because it enhances. So I always say, be knowledgeable and continue to be a learning vessel.
For each of the panelists, can you share a moment that your younger self sort of felt like you wanted to work in biopharma?
So actually, very early on, I did want to go into the pharmaceutical industry. In the Bay Area, there was an explosion in terms of biotechnology. And I remember at the time being sort of suggested that that wasn't as rigorous, potentially, as a scientific path. The irony is that some of that feedback I got 3 years later, they were reaching out and we were given seminars at the institution. So I think for me, in terms, I wanted to do science that made a difference. And I'm not saying that academic science doesn't make a difference. It's just generally the tangible is further down the road, and maybe I'm impatient or something like that. But I wanted to do something tangibly that could improve a patient's or a person's life, and that's what made industry very attractive to me from the beginning.
Yeah, and I think for me, I shared with you, I never thought I wanted to go into biopharma. It was really when I was interviewing at the first pharmaceutical company I worked at, and I saw how much people got to work with interdisciplinary teams, and just, again, the passion about trying to bring that remarkable impact to patients. It's like you, I think I got just a little impatient and wanting to do more faster.
So I think for me, I always had a very keen interest in the patients. I worked in hospitals for about 4 years as a nurse's aide before to get myself through college. And so I think for me, it was a very attractive industry. But there's other industries that I think would be really interesting as well. This is part of my problem. I'm curious about everything, and everything is interesting. I've never had a job I didn't like, including McDonald's. So I actually think everybody should work there. They're the best SOP writers on the planet. They're very clear, So But I'm tremendously proud to work in this industry, and I really do feel like we're making an amazing impact for our patients. I sit in a part of the organization where we get the feedback that comes from the patients. I was in quality for 5 years as well, so any call that would come in, and then I'm able to kind of complete that circuit, just like you are with your experience, and that's why it's excellent that you're keeping that, current, because that's how we understand what is the patient experience. There's a couple things that we're striving for, right? We want to have a great patient experience, and we also need to ensure the quality of the product. Those are the two big things that drive us all the time. Every patient will get their medicine every time. It will behave the way it's supposed to, whether it's a device or a medicine. And then, that they want to take the therapy to improve their life, that it's having it working. So it's extremely rewarding from that standpoint. And it's retained me, I guess, is how I would look at it, because I do have other passions.
And I think for me, it was finding another way to deliver care. So as soon as I realized that this was an opportunity, then I wanted to be a part of this industry. And so that's when the light bulb went off for me. I think in medical school, I didn't even realize it was a possibility. But again, seeing my mentors in residency do this sort of thing where they were key opinion leaders, et cetera, really sparked that interest in me, because now I could actually help create something as well as deliver something.
Can each of you talk about the most meaningful experience you've had at AbbVie in terms of feeling like you've had an impact on patients?
So in my daily role, where we are involved with the clinical trial execution, being able to take the various different compounds that we work on and see the impact that it has through the interpretation of the clinical trial data is amazing for me, because you can actually see how all the years that preceded you and all the years that you've been engaged are actually now paying off potentially down the road. So I think just being engaged in the clinical trial world gives you really that first sense that, wow, this may turn out to be something that can have that remarkable impact on patients' lives.
Yeah, and so since I'm not in the clinic, it's a little more removed. But I think the first time it really struck me was when a patient who was taking one of our medicines came and talked to us in person. And so you actually heard the patient journey, and you heard how much our company did beyond just the product to try to make the patient's life meaningful. So that for me was where I think I really started to fundamentally in my gut feel that sense of urgency for what we do.
Ironically for me, I was at another company that was collaborating with AbbVie to develop a drug, which today is approved. Very yay, exciting. And through that work, I was so impressed and inspired by the people that I saw at AbbVie, and now I get to do it as part of the AbbVie community.
So just one thing maybe to add, because I would echo everything that was said, is some of the feedback we get, from some of our patients, it's more about the caregiver as well. And those sometimes the feedback we get on how it's changed their life is really inspiring. So for me, it's the whole support network that can sometimes be affected by what we're able to bring to the market.
Do you have sponsors, someone like a mentor who can open doors and go beyond mentoring to support your career? This is for anyone.
Several. So I think that's what's really special about AbbVie, is that in multiple different junctions, the senior leaders of our company take this role seriously in all levels, I would say, at the company. And so not one, but several.
I think that's a great question, because there is a difference between a mentor and a sponsor. And yes, I do. I've had them in this career, and I've had them in other places where I've been, and it makes everything go a lot better for you because you're constantly challenged to be the best person you can because someone is willing to give you that information, that encouragement, and that opportunity to grow.
And I don't have anything to add. The answer is yes, I have mentors and sponsors.
Do you want to answer that too?
So I would say yes, and I think maybe it's not the sponsor in terms of an individual, and that's why I kind of hesitated when I was handed the microphone first, plus I don't think as quickly on my feet. But I'd say that it's set up for success. So there's things that we do around talent and moving the talent, and I've been the beneficiary of that. So I grew up in the technical arena. I was in it for 20 years, and then they put me in quality for 5 years, which was absolutely eye-opening for me. And that's one of the areas where I got to get a little bit closer to the patient, to hear from them on a daily basis. And now I'm back in technical, but it helps me to do my job much better. And that was a very deliberate decision that was made by our management. And I guess, at the highest level, it would be our president of the organization. But it's something we take actively. We're constantly looking at that in terms of developing our talent. What would be a good move for them? How is this aligned with their career goals? What would be a nice skill to add? And it's mutually beneficial for the organization and for the individuals.
We have time for a few more, although I want to ask all of these because they're really good questions. Do you feel that at any moment your career development was different because you're a woman?
No. I really pride it's been ingrained for me that I want to do it because I've earned it, right? So I don't ever feel like I've gotten a job that I wasn't qualified for. It may have been a stretch, or maybe I volunteered, maybe naively, but I got it because I earned it.
Yes.
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 Yeah, can you guys tell us more? I'm fascinated.
I think I found it actually interesting that I had sort of a different experience, and this hasn't been as true in the last several years, but earlier in my career, where I would bring forward ideas, or I would raise my hand and be the first one to raise my hand and say, I know I'm qualified for this. There's one example in particular I can think of where I had done the job in the previous company, and I raised my hand here, and I was told no, and in every single one of those cases, it was given to a male. And at least in this case, they were much less qualified.
The question was, do you feel that at any moment your career development was different because you're a woman?
I think for me, early on, people gave me advice that they thought might be helpful because I was a woman. And therefore, I started to internalize maybe I have to do things differently in order to achieve. So one of the main things I did, though, was to make sure that I broadened my mentor perspective to not only women, but to be inclusive of men, so that I could combine this feedback to really try to level set what my own innate expectations may have been at that time. But I do think about that a little bit, and maybe because I'm a type A personality, I try to, and I'm a people pleaser, so I really try to please a lot of people. And I think some of the feedback I got was really helpful in making sure that I didn't set up barriers myself, that I was open to opportunities, and that I had the confidence to try to go for things. And I think that was maybe different because people thought it might be different for me initially in medicine, and then later on when I started in other corporate positions.
I would say early on in my career, in different groups or settings, that men would be given more the benefit of the doubt in terms of the environment. You could be in meetings where you would put forth an idea as a woman, and you weren't listened to, and then 3 minutes later your male colleague says the same thing, and it's validated that this is the most wonderful thing that they've ever heard. You could have put together research where you did the majority of the chunk, and then the last little bit to get it over, someone took it over, from a colleague, and it was transformational in terms of driving that. But that's changed to a large degree, but I experienced that more earlier in my career.
We don't have that in journalism. Well, okay, one more question. I really like this question. I hate to end it on a sort of negative thing, but it's a positive thing too, and we all know how great you guys are. So what is one failure you've had, and what specifically did you learn from that? It's kind of a tough question there, I think. Any.
I've done a lot of drug development, so the vast majority of what you do there fails. So, for every one that works, there were probably 99 other programs that you went in and developed. So resiliency is a very important trait for a scientist.
I totally thought you were going somewhere else with that.
And I'll do a more personal one. I think where I struggled often in my career was with communication. I had a real stubborn attitude towards adjusting my communication style to be more appropriately received from women. And so things went a lot better for me when I just realized I needed to take that feedback.
So I think a lot of times I have intentions of something turning out to be a certain way. I'm a big planner, and I'm trying to think longitudinally, months in advance. And I think when things fall short, I beat myself up ferociously. And this, so it's not one failure. I think it's something that I'm learning to deal with a little bit better, is to realize that things will happen and to come up with a mitigation plan. So, and I think that's the most important lesson I've learned, is when things don't go as planned, make lemonade out of lemons and figure out, why didn't it go well? What can you do the next time? And forgive yourself, because usually we're our own worst critic. And then maybe also recalibrate the expectation, because you don't want to have low, dreams. You need to dream high. But you also have to make sure that within the time frame that you're allowing yourself, that it's realistic. So that's what I think of as not just one failure, but all the times maybe I don't achieve what I'd like to.
So I guess for me, as I try and answer this question, I'm thinking, if I haven't been able to convince somebody of something that I know is the right thing to do, that's probably what I would consider where I fail most often. So a technique that I've used now is I bring witnesses. No, so they can help me. So they can help me understand what I'm saying, so that I can adapt, right? Because to me it's so clear, it's so obvious. What is the problem, right? So for me, that's something that I've learned, that maybe bringing a couple other people into the conversation will give me insight, because they might not want to be critical of what they're hearing from me. But if you bring in a couple other people, who have no vested interest in the conversation that you have, they can help maybe mediate and have people come to a more like-minded. Because I can't tell you how many times it's so clear to me what needs to happen, and I just am not able to articulate what I'm trying to convey. So getting some help in that communication, I'll face it, I went into science because I did not want to be speaking in front of a bunch of people, and and that is, it's kind of ironic where the world leads you. So so for me, phone a friend, bring some people into the conversation to help really tease out why can't we agree on this, because I really think you got to be aligned with your teammates if you're going to be able to achieve big things.
All right, we're going to wrap it up, but I think the panelists are going to stick around if you guys want to chat. But thank you guys so much. This has been so fascinating to learn from you.
Thank you.